Hello!
Hi goslings.
Hi, goslings. So you might see Aronde or myself
On
looking
the cellular
to.
phone.
Oh no, Aronde, put your password into your computer so I can check on the comments.
Oh, messy beginning.
Do.
Technological difficulties.
Yeah.
There we go.
So you may see Aronde and I looking to either side of the screen because we're going to try to be better about tracking your comments and responding to them without leaning this close to the computer to read them.
It just feels too intimate. It's like too
close.
much for everyone.
It's too close. Yeah, I don't want you to know how big our pores are, but I do want you to know how smart our brains are. And we want to know how smart your little brains are. So join in the conversation. We are talking about the sexiest, steamiest, most smoldering topic today.
Yeah.
Rejection.
Wah, wah.
It's going to be lit. Wait for it.
Our visual pun worked a little bit better before we moved away.
That's our happy lamp.
Yes.
Welcome. So we're talking about rejection. I do actually think that it is a hot topic right now. I'm sort of like, I'm really interested in it. We talk about it a lot, and I'm sort of curious, like, why right now is this something that we're talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, I think right now in society, it's a really important topic as we're talking about like consent culture and cancel culture and Me Too and all of these things. That's a really fundamental piece of talking about getting consent is also looking at the fact that like sometimes you're going to hear no, right? Rejection is fundamentally a piece of that. And then I think that rejections come up in a lot of the past topics that we've gone through.
Yeah.
But we actually haven't really made much of a space to talk about it outside of that. So we figured we just needed our own episode just to kind of deal with some of that.
Yeah.
Also, side note, hi Olivia and Todd.
Hi, thanks for joining us. If Todd and Olivia, if you have any questions, join in the comments. We'll try to get to them.
I gave up on my phone, so I will be leaning close to the screen again.
You can see how the Aronde's pores are on his face. I'll stay over here. So we're interested in talking about rejection, and we talk about it like in our show. There's this one line that we say. It's like, if you ask for consent and someone says no, we can guarantee that you won't burst into flames. And like for some reason, as the years have gone on, that line has like resonated with me so much more. And I think it's because I have like realized how scared people are of rejection. And I'm sort of curious why people are so scared.
I think there's a lot of reasons. I do want to real quick say hi to Sharice and Jay. Love you both.
Hi.
I've not seen you in too long.
Oh.
But I think there's a lot of reasons why someone would be afraid of rejection. And so I think that like we as humans, we fundamentally like, we don't want to be wrong. And I'm like not just talking about like our opinions being wrong, but I think that like we fear that there's something like inherently wrong with us. And so when we are kind of displaying ourselves or giving of ourselves to a person, so like with our heart or our body, and then we hear no, we get a rejection, like that can feel really scary, as if they're rejecting us as a human being, as if something about us is undesirable or unlovable. And that's really hard, right? And so I think like that is like fundamentally the reason why rejection feels so daunting and so scary for people.
Like nobody, especially in like the consent education field, is saying that rejection isn't scary or isn't difficult.
Well, I was gonna say, and I think it's fascinating too, because like just on a very simple level, that like nice things feel nice, right? Like we want the things that we want, and so when we aren't able to get that thing, like it just sucks. Like,
so there's like a sort of reticence. That's a big word for vulnerability. I think sort of across our society, and also. Just love our educators, and also like a desire to feel good, and so rejection doesn't feel great. And I always like to think about the flip side of the equation. Like, if rejection is scary, is rejecting someone scary?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think there's like a lot of reasons why somebody might be afraid to reject someone also. Because I think that like, if you like the person or at very least don't have any reason to like have any ill will towards them, right? Like you might be afraid of hurting their feelings or coming off harsh or like damaging their self-esteem, because we know that rejection feels hard.
Right.
I think that like identity plays a lot into it. So I think that like if somebody has a marginalized identity, it can be really hard to want to reject someone because you fear for safety, right? And so if the person is like physically larger or stronger, like if the person has more social power, that can be really scary to reject them, because like you run the risk of like whatever realm their privilege runs in coming against you. And so that can feel really scary. And then the last one that kind of pops into my head is I think that rejection can be really hard when it's, I guess, how do we describe it? Rejection can be really hard when it's a person that you should be attracted to, right?
Oh, the shoulds.
And so, right,
Yeah.
like if society's telling you that this person's a good option, or like society's telling you that you should be hooking up with people, so because they're like attractive or have a good job or whatever, like they're a catch, it can be really hard to want to reject them, right? Because you're like, oh, like what if people expect me to be doing it, like no, I'm not fitting in, or what if like I never get anything better than this, right? Like I'm throwing away this good thing. So I think rejection can be like rejecting someone can be very scary.
Yeah, there's like lots of pressure on that side of the scale. I think about when you were talking about like the shoulds and things like that, it reminded me that like I've been in lots of situations where like, oh, it feels scary or like weird to reject someone, but also there's been lots of situations in my life, like in flirting or hooking up, that like I just haven't had the opportunity to say no.
Yeah.
And like that's equally like a like situation.
Yeah, I think that's fundamentally like a big piece of like flirting.
Yeah.
Refer back to our hot goss on flirting and consent and all of that, where it's like you have to give someone the space to be able to say no. Right? But I think that like that we think that demonstrating interest, which is like important, we think that demonstrating interest sometimes is the same as like taking someone else's choices away, and like that's not good, and like that's not important, right? That we want to make sure that persistence can be flattering, but persistence can also feel oppressive and can also feel like a threat in and of itself. And so, yeah, you have to make sure that you're like leaving space for somebody to have some sort of desire. You have to remember that like it takes two or more to tango, and so like you have to make sure that the other person wants to be doing what you're doing as well.
Right, you can't dance with someone who's not dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because like in that flirting conversation, one of the things that kept coming up when I was interviewing people is that that if you were in an interaction with somebody that was flirting with you, but you didn't really like it, you weren't into it, they would say they were hitting on me.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas like when people were like, oh, like it was flattering, or I like the person, so it felt like I was flirting with them. It's the difference between hitting on somebody like and flirting with them. You want to be in tandem. You want to be doing it with them.
There's language is like so telling about situations that we like don't know how to name.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. You had this, speaking of language, you had this like this metaphor about doors that I found like really helpful that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so it's so like when you're flirting with someone, right, and like there's obviously a risk of rejection. That I think it's the difference between like opening the door and inviting the person in, like that's demonstrating interest. You're opening the door, inviting them in if they would like to come, and then hanging out in that room. Versus opening the door and like reaching out and pulling this person in. Like one is like scary and it's overwhelming. And yes, that shows that you want them in the room, but also it's taken their choice to walk into the room away from them.
Yeah. Oh wow. That's actually like a great metaphor for consent and lots of other things.
Thank you so much.
Like, put that in your back pocket, use it, keep it. I'm gonna like
cite me.
Oh my god, that Aranda Kruger, 2019. I feel like I want to switch gears a little bit, but it's sort of related, which is about like the person doing the rejecting, the person pulled into the room. Like, what is their responsibility for the other person's feelings that they're rejecting?
That's where it gets complicated. I think to some extent there is responsibility, right? Like I don't think that it's like I don't think you're 100% responsible for the other person's feelings.
Yeah.
But I think that like remembering that there's a human being that you're in this interaction with, and I think even it's a matter of remembering that like, are you rejecting this human being like wholly as a person, or are you rejecting a specific interaction with them, right? And so it's like me being like, Catherine, I'm in love with you, I think we should date, and you being like, oh, I don't think I'm interested in that, like, but I'd love to keep being your friend, right?
Yeah,
you're not rejecting me as a person, like you just don't want this specific set of situations that I said. And that's what we talk about with like consent and sexual interactions too, that it's a matter of saying, I'm not interested in doing this thing, but let's do this other thing instead, you know?
Well, I think about like the bar example of like, even if it's someone you don't want anything to do with, like, be like, I want to go home tonight, please leave me alone, is different than being like, I want to go home tonight, I hope you're alone forever, and like walking away.
Yeah.
Which like,
And it's funny, because like you brought up a really good point earlier about like, before we were talking, that like, about like being like a female socialized person in this world. Like, and that like sometimes there's this like, people are being so persistent or being aggressive towards you, and like it feels icky to like have to like be nice to them. And I think that's fair, that like don't be nice to people that aren't valuing like really don't be nice to people that aren't nice to you, right? But like if somebody's taking away what you need to feel like safe and supported and capable of thriving in a situation, I think it's less necessary to like prioritize niceness.
Right.
I'm not saying like smash a glass over their head, but like I think that like calmly trying to like, get them out of the way might not be what your tactic is anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. Like if you feel like you no longer can just like be nice to them, I think that's fine.
Yeah, we're not saying like be mean and violent. We're saying be assertive.
Yeah.
And like I think assertion, especially on female bodies, reads as being mean. But like, so people who are getting rejected need to sort of reframe that in their heads in an interesting way. We had this interesting conversation about kindness, and like my knee-jerk reaction to be like, don't tell me to be nice when I'm rejecting people was very prevalent. But then I was like, I think there are situations where that knee-jerk reaction, or at least the concept of kindness needs to be pushed back upon, and it's like kindness and respect in rejecting does need to take center stage. I think there are specific instances where like you do have to be kind.
No, I think so.
Right?
This feels like another throwback to a hot goss about our intersectionality and dating conversation, where I think that it's like if the reason you're rejecting someone is based off of like an identity, like I think like that feels a little messed up.
That's
and
what
it feels
you're like.
Yeah, and it feels like yes, you should probably be kinder and like reevaluate what it is. So for example, if a person is saying like I categorically don't date Black people, that's like pretty messed up. That's rooted in a lot of like phobias and isms, and like and it's perpetuating a lot of damage. Yeah.
For example.
So it feels like that's something that you should like really question for yourself about like, all right, so what is it that I'm feeling this way about, right? Because like some would argue like I can't make myself be attracted to something I'm not attracted to, and that's not what we're saying. We're saying question what it is that you like want in the situation, because like this. You have not met every Black person. Like, surely there's one that is.
It's gotta be.
So I think if you're categorically dismissing someone based off an identity, without knowing who they are, that's where like rejection like becomes a problem. You need to really like question that and. Yeah. Right.
The like phrase like, oh, I don't want to hook up with you because you're Black or because you're gay or because like that is unkind, racist, like not okay.
Well, and it's really reductive. It's like
reductive,
it's like taking a person from being like a whole person to like just being this one small aspect of identity, and like that's and like there's few other ways or like realms that you would take one small aspect of a person's identity and use that like entirely as why you don't want to be with them.
Right. Well, and it goes back to your sort of like the party line of like reject the action, not the person. You know, and so by you're robbing someone of their personhood by being like your identity is why I don't want to be with you. And I think we're bumping up on like almost 15 minutes. But I want to ask our closing question, which is back on putting the focus back on the person getting rejected.
Heard.
How do you handle rejection well?
Great question. So it's funny. I think there's a lot of pieces to it, and I don't know which one has to come first, right? And so I think that like so I'm saying them not necessarily in any particular order. But I think that respecting somebody's no is really important, right? And like respecting the no and like accepting it are two different things, right? And so like accepting it might be like being like totally okay with it and being happy about it. Like that may or may not happen, whatever. But like at very least you need to respect the fact that somebody said no to you, right? And like not keep pushing. And not even necessarily try to like get too much reason about like why they didn't. But I was saying that like think about your favorite meal in the entire world that like I'm sure that like you want to eat it most times, but there might be sometimes you're like, oh, I just don't think I'm in the mood for that. It's a meal that you think has value. It's a meal that you think is tasty, and like, you just don't want it then. I think it's the same thing with a person. That just because someone's rejecting you doesn't mean you're not a tasty snack. It just means that like they just don't want that at that exact moment. So that I think next is remembering. Actually, I guess that's related. So then remembering that you have value, right? That like you are still that tasty snack, even if someone doesn't want to eat you in that moment. Gross.
Speak about it. Endorses cannibalism.
But yeah, like remember that, right? That you still have value, and so like respect their no. Remember that you still have value. Like somebody at some point, like you're a meal that someone wants. This food metaphor is going too long. Yeah, it's too much.
We're so hungry. We're never doing another one at noon.
I'm like doing this right through lunch. And then lastly, I think is like finding a way to actually it's maybe two things. Finding a way to be gentle to yourself, and so doing something that like feels like good and re-empowering and like helps you to remember that you have that value. And then I think remembering too that like there's other times in your life that you face rejection, like outside of that, right? And so like, what's the thing? So like if you asked to use someone's phone or borrow someone's car and they said no, like it wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't because they hated you. It's because like cars are expensive and someone like doesn't necessarily trust everyone with like a big ticket item, and like hearts are expensive, and like not everyone just wants to like throw their hearts around. So
pricey. My heart is so pricey.
Real expensive, y'all.
No, I think I feel like those are such like, you're so good at being like tender with people's feelings, and those are such like tender ways to treat oneself and sort of like rewrite the narrative about rejection. I think that like, I don't want to be like in America, but like we have such a problem with rejection, and we sort of view sex and dating as sort of an extension of the like, I hate to be like the capitalist machine, but like the sort of like go-getter attitude. And like, so when someone is rejected in that realm, it feels really devastating. And I think it can the knee-jerk reaction to like get defensive and like be like no but really can be harmful and can be the greatest offender to affirmative consent. And so I think those are lovely tender strategies, and we're gonna have some more strategies on our follow-up podcast.
Hey.
Boop, 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 boop. Our friend Danica, aka the main wing.
Words are hard.
Danica, the main wing woman. Clearly, I've never referred to anyone as my wing woman before. I think it's an amazing term. She's awesome. She's super fun. She's super funny. She's a professional dating coach. And when we reached out about Hot Gosh, she was like, oh, I totally want to do the rejection episode, because that's something that I work on with the clients that I have all the time. It's like cool strategies to handle rejection, because that is an inherent part of dating. So we will be dropping that podcast after we drop our sex toys podcast episode this month. So check us out on iTunes. So legit. If you're watching this and you have other questions, leave them in the comments below, and we will see you next time.
Bye, goslings. Oh, always the awkward part. Now we gotta get close again. I'm sorry. End video. Oh no, it's happening again. Oh no.